All right, welcome everybody to our next Pygame lesson. We are continuing on with our SpongeBob game. Where we left off last time was that we had a background, we added in a couple of images, and we enabled this to move around. SpongeBob is kind of the main character, and Patrick, and they move together when we press the W, A, S, D characters on the keyboard. W and D move it left and right. Or sorry, A and D move it left and right. W and S move it up and down. So we had that, and we also put in a clock to keep things from moving too fast. So this is set to run at 60 frames per second. If you get a little bit of flashing, it might be partly because some monitors aren't quite exactly 60 frames per second. It might be like 58, or some of them even go as low as 57. And setting the clock to 60 means that there might be a little bit of sync issues. But don't worry about it. If it is flashing a little bit, it's fine to ignore unless you want to play around with maybe changing the clock value slightly, maybe to match your monitor. Okay, so in this one, in this video, this lesson, we are looking at doing a couple things. First is, right now, the keys, it's only registering one kind of movement at a time. So just to bring this up again, I can't actually move diagonally. In a lot of, especially more modern 2D games, that diagonal movement, if you press two keys, for example, W and A, you'd want that to move up and to the left. In much more classic 2D games, you could not move diagonally, so this is kind of already true to that kind of style. But if you do want to enable diagonal movement, right now our code isn't doing that. So that's kind of our first challenge. Can we enable diagonal movement? And if you want to pause this video right now, this might be something you can figure out on your own. So pause the video, get into the code, try and play around with it, see if you can make a way for it to work. Okay. In terms of our solution, let's go down and actually code that in. So again, spoilers. If you want to try this yourself, pause the video now before I get into the solution. Okay, the reason that we can only go one direction at a time is because we have this whole if statement is if, then else if, then else if, then else if, and that's it. Okay, now what that means is that only one of those code blocks can run at a time. So either the A is pressed, and then if the A was pressed first, it's not going to register the D because it's already giving priority to the A. Let's even run that. So I'm going to even start with since the A is first, I'm going to press the D first, then I'll press A. So because A is first in that code, doesn't matter if I'm holding down D this whole time and just kind of periodically touching the A key. A has priority here, which is kind of interesting, right? So even though D is being held down the whole time, it all comes down to the ordering of the code. And only one of these can run. So if A is running, D, which is coming second, can no longer run. So that's kind of interesting to keep in mind. Now, when we have if we want to enable diagonal movement, we kind of have a couple of options here. We could do something like just get rid of all of the else ifs. If we make this 4 if statements, these can all run all at once. So let's look at how that works. So if I open this up again, if I press one key at a time, it's exactly the same as before. But now I can actually already move diagonal because it's checking for all these different kinds of movement. But there is also one thing that's a little bit tricky here, is that if I hold like two opposite directions, like A and D at the same time, it's on one hand it's adding 5, and the other hand it's subtracting 5. So we kind of get stuck, and we might not want that to happen. So we're going to break this up a little bit differently, is that we're going to split this up into 2 blocks. So for diagonal movement, we're going to have 2 separate blocks. Let's close out this text here. We're going to have 2 separate movement blocks. Separate movement blocks for diagonal movement. Okay, so we're going to have one if then else if for the horizontal movement. So key A is still having some priority here, but if A is already being pressed, then D isn't going to run. So this kind of eliminates the kind of, if we're button mashing here, we're not going to like stay in one spot. So the left will win out here. Now, if you disagree with how that works, I mean, you can go back to everything being an if you want it to be designed where if you press two opposite buttons, it just freezes. You're welcome to do that. It all depends on what design you're looking for. So now, this just feels a little bit more intuitive to me, where when I'm moving around, I don't have these kind of stops and stutters. So 2 separate code blocks. I can press, it'll register one of each direction key, and now we can move in a more fluid motion. So one little change, just how the computer handles your if statement. One little change makes a pretty big gameplay difference there. So that's our first goal kind of made. Our second goal is going to be to add in a few obstacles. So we're not going to worry about collisions yet, but we do want to add in a couple more surfaces in order to have a few kind of obstacles that we can pretend we're trying to avoid. So at this point, you'll notice I have a couple of new files in my sidebar here. One is called Pineapple 50. It is a pineapple that I found just with a Google search. I don't have a reference for this one, unfortunately. And same thing with a starfish. So we have 2 items that are 50 pixels wide. And these are PNGs, so we have a transparent background, and these are going to kind of move around the screen, and we want to kind of code in that motion, because eventually we would want to check when we got hit by one of these different surfaces, and maybe that will trigger some new things. That won't be happening today, but we just want to code in the motion. So let's go back into the file, and keeping in with our organization, it probably makes sense if I have the pineapple that I would put it in this section called image files. So what we had last time was we had this kind of pygame.image.load line of code to kind of bring in the image. And then we might also need some coordinates if motion is something we want to track. And since the pineapple and the starfish are going to be moving across the screen, we're going to use basically these 3 lines as an example. But let's just go ahead and start with the variable name here. So I'm going to call this pineapple. It's a variable storing the overall image. And we're going to say it's equal to Pygame. We're going to follow the exact same structure. So it's a Pygame. It's in the Pygame library. It's in the image section, and it's the load function. And the file name, because I have it in the same folder as my code, I just need to write the file name. So just be careful with the spelling. Capitalization is important. So if everything here is lowercase, so just make sure that is correct. And we're going to say convert alpha again to have the optimization occur. And we're going to start with, we're also going to have the pineapple X coordinate. I'm going to set this to be off the screen to start. So I'm going to put that at -50. I know that the overall width of the image is 50. And from what we kind of remembered last time, let's bring up the pineapple. The top left is the default 0, 0. So if I want this to be off the screen, I need this point here just to be 50 pixels to the left of the screen, which is -50, since the left part of the screen is a 0. So we're putting it at -50 off the screen, and we're going to do a pineapple Y coordinate, and we're going to put that somewhere in the center-ish, let's say 300. So it's going to be off the screen horizontally, but it's going to be somewhere kind of in the middle-ish vertically. Now let's do the same sort of thing with starfish. So I'm going to actually copy and paste a little bit here, because that is a bit faster. So just be careful that you change every instance every time pineapple shows up. We do want this to stay starfish. So we're going to say starfish is the new variable. Starfish, and the image file is starfish50. So don't rush through these changes. When you copy and paste code, when you work too quickly, it's just really easy to make a mistake there. And we're going to have starfish X, and starfish y. And we want this starfish to start in a slightly different place. So we're going to have this start at 0. So this will be on screen. And we're going to have it at the 200 point in the y. So it's going to show up above the pineapple where that would show up. Okay, but again, these are just the variables. This is the starting point. These aren't actually getting written to the screen yet, right? This is at the top of the file where we're just kind of getting everything ready. Anything about what goes on the screen happens inside of the while loop. That's our game loop, okay? So I'll give you kind of the outline here, your exercise, what you're trying to do, and you can kind of pause this video if you think you know how to do it. Maybe I'll give you one little hint here. I'm going to have one extra variable here called star move right, and we're going to set that equal to true. Okay, so this is a Boolean variable. Star moving right could either be true or could be false, because the challenge you have here to organize is I want this pineapple to start off the screen to the left, go all the way across the screen, and then kind of disappear, move back to the beginning, and so it's always kind of moving left to right on the screen. Okay, so you can think about what that means for the coordinate variables. The starfish, on the other hand, I want this to bounce. It's going to start at the left of the screen, move to the right. When it hits the right boundary, it's going to bounce and then move left, and then move right, and then move left. So we have two different kinds of motion here. The pineapple one is a little bit less challenging, or maybe a lot, depending on how you're doing. So this extra hint with this Boolean variable of the star moving right, is that true or false, is going to get used. So now pause this video, because in a second I'm going to get into the game loop and I'm going to start coding in how this motion is going to work. So here we go. All right, so we're going to get into here, and first thing I'm going to do is add the new images to my drawing here. So I'll try and keep these all in the same place. I might need to move some things around if I notice something isn't quite right. But I think I want to have, in terms of layers, I don't want the pineapple and starfish to be on top of SpongeBob. So I'm going to put them in between the background and SpongeBob. So I'll have screen.blit. It is the pineapple first, we'll say. Pineapple, and then we have to give it a XY coordinate. So it's going to show up at pineapple X, pineapple Y. That's why we made those variables. And the other one is the starfish, so screen.blit. This is how that's the block image transfer, but just a drawing command. Now it's the starfish surface that we are drawing, starfish, and it needs a coordinate. So this was starfish X and starfish Y. Okay, so that should draw them to the screen. I'm just gonna play this. And now you can see on the screen that I do have that starfish right on the left. The pineapple is currently off screen, so it's okay that I'm not seeing that because I did that intentionally. Okay, so now what we're going to say is so we're checking for new events. Then we're doing our keys. So let's put this maybe in a new block. We'll say, so we've got our blocks checking for the key presses. Now we're going to have obstacle movement. So we'll have a new kind of section in between this and the display being updated. And let's do one for the pineapple first. Let's say that pineapple X is equal to pineapple. I spelled that wrong, right? Yeah. Pineapple X is equal to pineapple X plus, let's do a plus 8 or so. So this is a little bit faster than what we can move, because our keys, we move +5. So this is a little bit faster, meaning that it's hopefully maybe a bit of a challenge to dodge. So what we're doing is we're just changing the X coordinate. And this is inside of a loop, right? So this is going to run and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. So even this with this one line, it is going to keep adding 8 pixels to X. So if we just run this, we can kind of see the change. There it goes. The pineapple it actually went off the screen. So that's a little bit lower than I want it to be. So we're going to change the Y up here to, let's make it 200, and we'll make the starfish, we'll drop that to 100. So we'll just make that little change here. And there, the pineapple went off the screen. You could actually see the pineapple went behind SpongeBob, and that's because of the ordering of the blitz. So when this game starts up, I do need to make a note to get out of the way very quickly, because if I were doing a collision, that pineapple would have hit me right away. Now, what we need to fix here is that this game is still running, and the pineapple's gone. It's way, it's so far off to the right of the screen that it is... it's not coming back. So we need to code it to come back, because I want it to, after it goes off the screen, I want it to kind of reset itself back on the left. So if I need it to have a bit of code that is going to run only sometimes, that is an if statement, right? We need this to happen where if the pineapple X coordinate, if pineapple X, so we want that to be bigger than the screen. So we have a variable for that, like luckily already, right? If pineapple X is ever bigger than the screen width, we actually want it to reset its coordinate. So we're going to say pineapple X is going to be equal to -50 again. So let's just look at what that single line does. There's the pineapple, and now it's something that I would need to dodge. So like we said, we can't outrun this if we just go to the right, because it's moving 8 and we can only move 5. So it does become a game where we have to dodge the pineapple. So we want the pineapple to be moving always to the left, and the starfish is eventually going to bounce side to side. But the pineapple is already moving in the way we want it to move. Now, we could play around with something like a diagonal motion and other things, but right now we're just going left to right. All right, so there's the pineapple. It is going just fine. Okay, so now we want to get into the starfish. So again, that was only a couple of commands here. Tell the pineapple to move its coordinate to the right, but if it ever ends up being greater than or equal to the screen width, just reset it back to 0. So, and let's look at the anchor there just to, because that's going to be more important with the starfish. The anchor, again, is the top left. So once this piece is bigger than the screen width, that means the pineapple is completely off the screen, because everything, the whole pineapple is drawn to the right of this kind of 0, 0 coordinate. So we're going to have to take that into account when we do the starfish, because we don't want it to go off the screen. We want it to bounce back and forth. Okay, but let's start with the starfish now. So we can't do a kind of blanket pineapple X is moving 8 to the right, because that's going to depend on whether or not the starfish is moving left or right. So that's why we have this variable here, if star move right. If this is true, we want to say that so if it should be moving to the right, we want to say something like this: star fish X is equal to star fish X plus 8. Okay, so if star move right is actually true, so it should be moving to the right, then we want to increase the X coordinate by 8. Now, if it is not true, then we want to tell it to move left, right? So if, let's see, is this going to be an else if? Let's make it an else if for now, but we can change it if this logic isn't going to do everything for us. So if star move right is false. So if it shouldn't be moving to the right anymore, we want to tell it to take the X coordinate and subtract. I'm forgetting my X's. Starfish X minus 8. Okay, so if we run this, we're going to see that the starfish isn't coming back. So we're missing the part where we tell it to bounce. And I actually don't want it to do, let's make the starfish go a little bit faster. We'll make it go 12. It wouldn't be a bad idea to actually make this kind of speed of the, let's actually do that. We're going to make the, we're going to come up here and we're going to set a new set of variables. We're going to call this speed variables. So we're going to call this sponge speed is equal to 5. We're going to say pineapple speed is equal to 8. And let's say that the starfish is the fastest one. Starfish speed equals, let's try 12. So this will let us only change the speed in one spot because we have a lot of 5s already in here and we have a lot of 8s. So let's just make this a variable sponge speed. And we'll do that here as well. Sponge speed, sponge speed, sponge speed, sponge speed. Just be careful of any typos. This is pineapple speed. And now we want starfish speed. Did I call it star speed or starfish speed? Starfish speed it is. Starfish speed and starfish speed. Okay, so there are a couple of ways we could write this if statement. Let's maybe do an extra layer here. So if the star move right is on, then we're going to increase the x coordinate for the starfish. But we still need a kind of condition similar to what we had up here with the pineapple. If it's bigger than the screen, then we want it to go the other way. So what we're going to have now is that should be, we're just going to make an extra layer inside of this code. So we're going to say another if statement. If starfish x, so this is going to be a little bit trickier because we don't want the starfish to go off the screen. So I'm just going to double check the dimensions of the image here. So it was 50 pixels wide. So where I want this to bounce, since again we're at the top left of the image, we want to leave a 50 pixel buffer between here and the end of the screen. So if we want the starfish to stop when it is 50 pixels less than the screen width, or if we say that this coordinate plus 50 should be the screen width. Those are two equivalent ways of saying it. So let's actually do it that way. If starfish x plus 50 is greater than or equal to the screen width. Okay, so that kind of matches this pineapple one up top, but since we don't want the starfish to get off the screen, we're giving it an extra 50 pixel buffer, which is the width of the image. So if that is true, then we actually want to switch star move right to false. So then once this becomes false, we're not going to get into this code block for a little while again, because we only get in here if star move right is true. And then we should get into the second one. So let's see, this should get us, I think, 1 bounce. But let's run this. Ooh, it's going fast. There we go, we got the 1 bounce, and then we haven't written the other part of the code yet, so we're missing the part where the starfish bounces the other way. And that, I don't know, that starfish speed of 12 looked a little bit fast. We might need to adjust that variable a little bit later. But let's do another kind of layer here as well. So if starfish x, so if it's already moving to the left, because starfish move or star move right is false, if this is less than or equal to 0, that's what we want to say here, because that's the complete left of the screen. If this ever kind of hits the left boundary, we want to then say star move right is now true again. So then that will keep us out of this block for a little while, and we'll kind of come back to the top block. So let's give that a try. I think this might start to work. Okay, there we go. We've got a bouncing starfish. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely faster than SpongeBob. I mean, already it's a little bit hard to dodge these things. I guess we can potentially go off the screen. And we might want to then maybe write some limits so SpongeBob actually can't go off the screen. Maybe we should do that in another video. But now we've got the start of the game, right? We've got these images, we've got these obstacles we're trying to avoid. It's almost like a Frogger where maybe SpongeBob and Patrick are trying to get across the ocean and they have to get to the other side without getting whacked by these things. Yeah, that's not too bad. All right, so that's it for this video. Stay tuned for the next one.